Jamal was just like any other boy, but his life wasn't easy. He lived in a small, quiet neighborhood in the city. The houses were close together, and the streets weren't always clean. His family didn't have much money, and his parents worked hard every day to make sure he and his younger sister, Mia, had food to eat and a roof over their heads. Jamal's dad worked long hours at a factory, while his mom worked in a local grocery store. They both worked hard, but their jobs didn't pay very well. Jamal had always wanted more for his family. He dreamed of a life where they didn't have to worry about money. He wanted to help his parents so they didn't have to work so hard. But Jamal knew that dreams didn't come true easily. It took hard work, and he was willing to do whatever it took to make those dreams come true. Despite the tough situation at home, Jamal was determined to get ahead. He was a smart kid, always doing his best at school. He loved learning, especially math and science. Every day after school, Jamal would help his mom with dinner and take care of his younger sister. When the chores were done, he would spend hours studying. Jamal knew that education was his ticket to a better life. If he could finish school, he could get a good job and help his family. But there was one thing that always bothered him. His shoes. Jamal's shoes were old. The soles were thin, and the leather was cracked. They had been his older brother's shoes before he had outgrown them. Jamal wore them because there was nothing else. Every time he walked to school, he could feel the cold ground through the worn-out soles. He tried not to let it bother him, but it was hard. Kids at school sometimes teased him about his shoes. They didn't mean to be cruel, but Jamal felt embarrassed. He couldn't help it. He wished he had new shoes, just like the other kids. One day, as he walked to school, he overheard two boys laughing behind him. "Look at Jamal's shoes," one of them said. "They're falling apart." Jamal felt his face turn red. He tried to walk faster, but it didn't help. The boys kept laughing, and Jamal's heart sank. It wasn't the first time it had happened. He tried to ignore it, but deep down, it hurt. It always did. At home, Jamal didn't talk much about the teasing. He didn't want to make his parents worry. They already had enough to deal with, but it was hard not to think about it. It made him feel like he wasn't good enough, like he didn't belong with the other kids. But Jamal wasn't one to give up easily. He kept telling himself that one day he would have better shoes. One day he would have the life he dreamed of. Jamal's chance came one summer when he heard about a job at a local grocery store. The job was small, just a few hours a week, but it was something. The store needed help with stocking shelves, and Jamal was excited to apply. He had never worked before, but he was willing to give it a try. His parents were proud of him for taking the initiative, but they also worried. They didn't want him to overwork himself, especially with school starting soon. But Jamal was determined to prove that he could handle it. When Jamal got the job, he was thrilled. He worked after school, helping the store owner, Mr. Patel, with whatever he needed. Jamal was a hard worker, and Mr. Patel quickly noticed. He would often give Jamal extra hours because he was always willing to help. After a few months of working, Jamal had saved up a small amount of money. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He didn't spend any of it. Instead, he kept it in a small envelope hidden in his room, telling himself that it would be for something special. One day, Jamal had a thought. He remembered the bank down the street, the one he had passed by many times. He had always been curious about how it worked. He had heard that people could open accounts there and save their money. Maybe that was the right place for him to keep his savings. If he could open an account, he would feel more grown-up, more in control of his future. Jamal knew it wouldn't be easy. He didn't have much money, and he didn't have any fancy clothes to wear, but he wasn't worried about that. He knew that this was an important step. So after saving for a few months, Jamal decided that he would go to the bank. He put on his old shoes, the ones that had been with him through so many tough days, and walked to the bank. His heart raced with excitement. It was a big step. As he walked, he thought about his family and how much he wanted to make their lives better. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to try. When Jamal reached the bank, he took a deep breath and stepped inside. The bank manager, Mr. Harris, looked up as Jamal walked in. He raised an eyebrow when he saw the boy in worn-out shoes standing in front of him. Jamal felt a little nervous, but he stood tall. He had a goal. He was ready to check his balance and take control of his future. Little did he know, this simple visit to the bank would change everything. Jamal stood outside the bank, staring up at the tall building. The glass doors reflected the early morning light, and for a brief moment, Jamal thought about turning back. His old shoes made a squeaky sound with every step he took, but he tried not to think about it. He had come this far, and there was no turning back now. Today, he was going to check his bank account for the first time. He had saved up every penny he could, and he wanted to see if it was enough to make a difference. The neighborhood he lived in wasn't the safest. There were a lot of boarded-up windows and streets that looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years. People often gave him strange looks when he walked through the neighborhood in his old shoes. Sometimes they didn't even bother to hide their laughter. Jamal didn't mind the laughter. He had learned to ignore it, but it always made him feel like he didn't belong. Today, though, he pushed those feelings aside. Today was different. He had never been inside a bank before. His parents didn't have an account, and they never talked much about money. The most he knew about banks was from the TV commercials he had seen with people smiling and holding up shiny checks. But Jamal wasn't expecting anything like that. He just wanted to see if his hard work had paid off. Jamal pushed open the glass door and stepped inside. The cool air hit him, and for a second, he felt out of place. The bank was bright and clean, with shiny floors that almost sparkled. There was a long counter ahead, and behind it, an older man was sitting. He wore a tie and glasses, looking very serious. Jamal swallowed hard, unsure of what to do next. "Can I help you?" the man behind the counter asked. His voice was polite, but there was a small smile on his face, as if he didn't expect much from the young boy standing in front of him. Jamal could feel his heart race. Yes, Jamal said, trying to sound confident. "I'd like to check my account balance." The man looked at him, then down at the computer screen in front of him. "Do you have an account with us?" he asked, his voice polite but sounding a little surprised. "Yes," Jamal said, his voice a little shaky. He dug into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper with his account number written on it. The manager's eyes widened slightly when he saw it. "All right, let's see what we have here," the man said. But his tone wasn't as warm as before. He clicked a few keys, and the screen in front of him began to load. Jamal's palms were sweating. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew it wasn't going to be anything big. After all, he wasn't rich. Just a kid with a few dollars saved up. But as the screen loaded, something strange happened. The man looked at the computer screen, then looked back at Jamal, his eyebrows raised. "I think I need to check this again," he muttered under his breath. He clicked on the screen again, then turned the monitor so Jamal could see it. The numbers didn't make sense at first. The balance in the account was higher than Jamal had imagined. Much higher. In fact, it was so much higher than he expected that his heart skipped a beat. He had been saving for months, working after school and on weekends, but he never thought he'd saved this much. It wasn't a fortune, but it was more than enough to prove that his hard work had paid off. Jamal's mouth went dry, and for a moment, he didn't know what to say. The manager was still staring at the screen, his face now serious. Jamal's mind was racing. Had he made a mistake? Was it possible that someone had deposited money into his account by mistake? But when the manager turned to look at him, there was no mistake in his eyes. "How much is this?" Jamal finally managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. The manager looked back at the screen and cleared his throat. This is more than most people your age have," he said slowly. "It's single quotes S. Impressive." Jamal felt a little embarrassed. It wasn't that he had done anything extraordinary. He had just saved up from working small jobs, little by little. Every day after school, he would help Mr. Patel at the local store. Sometimes he would run errands for neighbors or mow lawns. Every dollar he earned went into that account. And now, here it was, a balance that seemed so much bigger than he ever imagined. The manager leaned back in his chair and studied Jamal carefully. "How old are you?" he asked. 16, Jamal replied. He didn't know why the manager was asking, but he wasn't going to lie. "You've been saving this much at such a young age?" the manager asked, still looking surprised. Jamal nodded. "I know it's not a lot, but I've been working hard. I want to make sure I can help my family one day." The bank manager's expression softened. "I see," he said quietly. "Well, you're doing something most adults can't even do." "That's impressive, Jamal. You should be proud of yourself." Jamal smiled shyly. It wasn't about being proud of himself. It was about making a change. He was doing this for his family, for his future. But hearing someone else say it made him feel a little better about everything. The manager's tone became more respectful. "You're welcome to keep your savings here, or we can help you open other accounts if you want. But whatever you decide, you're clearly on the right path." Jamal felt a warm rush of pride. He had done it. He had taken the first step. And this small victory felt huge. The room was quiet except for the sound of keys clicking on the keyboard. Jamal stood still, his eyes glued to the screen in front of him, unable to tear his gaze away. The manager, Mr. Harris, kept glancing between the computer and Jamal, his expression slowly changing from calm to one of confusion, and then, finally, to shock. Jamal's heart beat faster with each passing second. He hadn't expected much from his savings, but this was more than he ever dreamed. "Can you check it again?" Jamal asked, his voice barely a whisper. I don't think that's right." The manager didn't respond at first. He was too busy staring at the screen, as though trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Jamal shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. It felt like time had stopped. Every second dragged on. He was starting to feel nervous. What if something had gone wrong? What if the bank had made a mistake? But when the manager finally turned the screen so that Jamal could see it, his mouth went dry. On the screen was a number far bigger than Jamal had expected. It wasn't just a few $100s like he thought. Is that ... is that really my balance?" Jamal asked again, his voice trembling a little. Mr. Harris, still in disbelief, clicked a few more buttons on the keyboard. He cleared his throat, then leaned back in his chair, his eyes still fixed on the screen. He looked at Jamal as though he was seeing him for the first time, his earlier judgment now replaced with surprise. "I've been working here for over 20 years, Mr. Harris said, shaking his head in amazement. "I've seen people of all ages open accounts. But a 16-year-old with this much saved up, that's something special." Jamal could hardly believe what he was hearing. He had worked for every single dollar in that account, earning money by mowing lawns, helping his neighbors, and working at the local grocery store. Each job was small, and each paycheck was tiny, but he had saved up, little by little. He hadn't spent a single cent on anything unnecessary. Even when he'd felt tempted to buy new shoes or a treat for himself, he resisted. Now, all that sacrifice was paying off. I didn't expect it to be this much," Jamal said, his voice filled with wonder. His eyes flickered to the balance again. The numbers seemed so big, so real, it was hard for him to grasp. Mr. Harris leaned forward, resting his hands on the counter. "You should be proud of yourself, Jamal," he said, his tone now respectful. "Most adults don't have the kind of discipline you've shown. Some people work their whole lives and don't save a fraction of what you have here." Jamal could feel his chest swell with pride. He hadn't thought of it that way. He had just been trying to help his family, trying to make sure they wouldn't struggle anymore. This money wasn't just for him. It was for them too. Maybe with it, he could buy new shoes for his parents, pay for his school supplies without worrying, or even start saving for college. His mind raced with all the possibilities. But even as his excitement grew, a thought gnawed at him. What if this money wasn't really his? What if there was a mistake? Jamal didn't know much about banking, but he knew that people sometimes made mistakes. He didn't want to get his hopes up only to find out that it was all a misunderstanding. "Are you sure this is my balance?" Jamal asked again, more hesitantly this time. Mr. Harris paused, staring at the screen, then back at Jamal. "I've checked it over and over again," he said slowly. "This is your money. All of it." His voice softened, and there was a hint of admiration in his eyes. "You've worked hard for this. You've earned it." Jamal let out a deep breath, the weight of his thoughts beginning to sink in. He had been saving for months, doing whatever he could to help out at home. But now, seeing the result of all that hard work right in front of him, it felt like a dream. For the first time in a long time, Jamal allowed himself to smile. It wasn't a huge smile, but it was genuine. A quiet smile that said everything. The kind of smile that came from knowing that, for once, things might just turn out better than expected. Mr. Harris, sensing Jamal's relief, smiled too. "I can see why you wanted to check your balance today," he said, his voice lighter than before. "You've got a good start, and I think you're going to do great things with it." Jamal's hands trembled slightly as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notebook, a reminder of the list of things he had been dreaming of buying or helping with. It wasn't much, just a few simple goals, like buying new shoes for his mom and dad, or saving enough to go to college. But now it seemed like those goals weren't so far away. The money was there, and it was real. "Thank you," Jamal said, his voice full of sincerity. "I didn't expect this." "I really appreciate it." Mr. Harris gave him a nod, still amazed by the boy's maturity. "It's rare to see someone so young with so much focus." "You should keep it up, Jamal. Don't let anything get in your way." Jamal nodded. The compliment meant more than words could express. He had always worked hard, but he had never felt like it was enough. Now, though, he was starting to see that his hard work was paying off, and it wasn't just about the money. It was about the confidence that came with it. The realization that, no matter where you came from, if you worked hard enough, you could change your future. As he left the bank, Jamal's steps were lighter than when he had entered. He glanced down at his worn-out shoes, but this time he didn't feel embarrassed. Today, he had taken a big step towards changing his life, and that felt better than any new pair of shoes ever could. Jamal stepped back from the counter, his mind still racing. The bank's cool air felt sharper now, like it was pushing him to think more clearly. But as Jamal turned to leave, the bank manager, Mr. Harris, called after him. "Wait, Jamal." Jamal paused. He wasn't sure if he was ready for another conversation. He had come in to check his balance, and he had gotten the answer he needed. What else was there to talk about? But something in the manager's voice made him stop. Mr. Harris walked over from behind the counter and placed a hand gently on the desk. His usual businesslike expression was replaced by a mix of curiosity and respect. The way he looked at Jamal now was different. Before, he had seen a kid with worn-out shoes, someone who seemed out of place in a bank. But now, there was something in the way he looked at Jamal, something that told Jamal that he had earned more than just the money in his account. "You're something special, Jamal," Mr. Harris said, his voice much softer than before. "I've been working here for a long time, and I've seen a lot of people come and go. Most people your age wouldn't even think about saving money. But you've been saving for months, maybe even years. And that takes real discipline." Jamal felt the blood rush to his face. He wasn't used to receiving compliments. At home, his parents worked hard every day, but they never talked about being proud of him. Not because they didn't care, but because life had always been a struggle. They just didn't have the time for praise. But here, in this bright, clean bank, a stranger was telling him that he was doing something right. It felt strange but good. Mr. Harris gave him a small, encouraging smile. "I know it's not easy, especially with what you've been through. I can tell that you're different, Jamal. You're going places. Don't ever forget that." Jamal didn't know how to respond. He had spent so much of his life focused on the day-to-day grind, making sure his family had enough to eat, doing his homework, working after school. He hadn't really thought about going places until now. It was a nice thought, though. It made him feel like maybe he wasn't stuck, like maybe there was a future ahead of him. But before Jamal could say anything, Mr. Harris added, "I know you've been working hard for your money, but there's something else we can do here for you. Something that could help you in the long run." Jamal raised his eyebrows, curious but cautious. He hadn't expected anything more than just checking his account. What could the manager possibly offer him now? Mr. Harris seemed to sense his hesitation. "Listen, you've saved a lot for someone your age. That's impressive. But have you thought about what you're going to do with that money? I'm not talking about spending it right now, but about using it to set up a future. We offer savings plans here, investment accounts, college savings funds, things like that. With your discipline, you could really grow that money over time. You could even start planning for college early." Jamal felt a flutter in his chest. College, he had never really thought about it that much. It wasn't that he didn't want to go. It was just that it always seemed so far out of reach. His parents never talked about college. They barely had enough money for groceries, let alone tuition. The idea that he could actually go to college felt like a dream, one of those big dreams that other people had, not someone like him. But hearing Mr. Harris suggest it made the possibility seem real. "I don't know," Jamal said slowly. "I've never really thought about saving for college. I've just been trying to help my family." Mr. Harris nodded understandingly. "That's important, Jamal. Family always comes first. But what you've done here, saving and being disciplined with your money, it is the kind of thing that could set you up for success in the future. You've already taken the hardest step, being responsible with what you have. Now you just need to think about how you can use it to make things better for yourself and your family in the long run." Jamal wasn't sure what to say. It felt like the bank manager was asking him to think bigger than he ever had before. College? Investing? These were things that Jamal had never even considered. But maybe it was time for him to start thinking that way. Mr. Harris smiled again, reading Jamal's hesitation. "Look, Jamal, I'm not trying to pressure you into anything. But when you have someone who shows this much discipline, I just want to make sure you're using that to your advantage. I can help you set up a plan, or even just give you some information to think about. You don't have to decide now. But when you're ready, we'll be here to help." Jamal stood there, still a little overwhelmed. The idea of saving for something like college or investing seemed far away, but it also felt like a new opportunity. Maybe it wasn't just about surviving anymore. Maybe it was about thriving. Maybe, just maybe, he could change the direction of his life, his family's life. "Okay," Jamal said quietly. "I'll think about it." Mr. Harris's eyes brightened. "That's all I can ask, Jamal. You've already done more than most people your age. And I can tell you've got the potential to do even more." As Jamal turned to leave the bank, he felt a new sense of determination growing inside him. For the first time, he was starting to believe that his future might not be as limited as he thought. He wasn't just some kid from a rough neighborhood. He was someone with goals, with dreams, and with the discipline to make them happen. And maybe, just maybe, he was going to prove that hard work could take him places. Jamal stepped out of the bank, the cool breeze hitting his face, and for a moment, he felt like a different person. He had come in just to check his account balance, but what had happened inside was more than he ever expected. Not only had he discovered he had saved more money than he thought, but the bank manager, Mr. Harris, had seen something in him. He had spoken with a level of respect Jamal hadn't felt before. For the first time, Jamal felt like his hard work had actually mattered, like he wasn't just a kid in old shoes anymore. As he walked down the street, the noise of the busy city filled his ears, but it seemed distant now. He was lost in thought, replaying the conversation with Mr. Harris over and over. What Mr. Harris had said about college and saving for the future stuck with him. Could he really do it? Could he save enough to go to college? Was that even possible for someone like him? Jamal's mind spun as he thought about what he could do with the money he had. A part of him wanted to buy something new, maybe a new pair of shoes, or even some clothes that didn't have holes in them. But the bigger part of him knew that this money was more than just a way to get a little extra comfort. This could be the beginning of something bigger, something important. And for the first time in his life, Jamal felt the spark of hope. But as he walked, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from his mom. She was asking him when he would be home. It was a simple message, but it reminded Jamal of his reality. Even with the money he had saved, his family was still struggling. His mom worked long hours, and his dad worked nights at a factory. The bills still piled up, and there were days when the refrigerator didn't have enough food. But Jamal couldn't help feeling like today was different. He had taken control of his future, and he wanted to make sure his family would have the chance to do the same. As he neared his house, he heard the familiar sound of his younger sister Mia laughing in the yard. He smiled to himself. No matter how tough things got, his family always stuck together. That was the one thing Jamal was sure of. But there was still one thing he needed to face. When Jamal walked into the house, his mom was sitting at the kitchen table, going through a stack of bills. She looked up as he entered, her tired eyes lighting up with a smile when she saw him. "How was your day, Jamal?" she asked, though Jamal could tell she was still stressed. There was always something on her mind, something she was worrying about. "It was good," Jamal said, trying to hide the excitement in his voice. He didn't want to get ahead of himself. "I went to the bank." His mom raised an eyebrow. "The bank? For what?" "I checked my account," Jamal said, his voice quiet. "And it's more than I thought." His mom looked confused for a second. "What do you mean?" Jamal pulled out his phone and showed her the bank app. His mom's eyes widened as she stared at the screen. "Jamal, this is amazing," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. "You've worked so hard, and now you have this." "I don't know what to say." Jamal felt his throat tighten. "Mom, there's something else." He hesitated, then told her about the conversation he'd had with Mr. Harris, the bank manager. How he'd suggested Jamal could start saving for college. How he could grow his money through investments. Jamal told his mom that for the first time, he saw a way out, a way to change their lives for the better. His mom put a hand over her mouth, looking at him like he was someone she barely recognized. "Jamal, I had no idea," she said softly, her voice cracking. "You've been working so hard, and I never even asked you how you were doing. I've been so focused on trying to make ends meet. I'm sorry, baby. I should have paid more attention." Jamal felt a lump form in his throat. It wasn't like he was angry at his mom. He knew she was doing the best she could, but it had always been this way. They didn't have a lot, and she had always worked hard, trying to keep things together. But it meant the world to Jamal to hear her say that she was proud of him, even if she hadn't always been able to show it. "It's okay, Mom," Jamal said softly. "I know you've been trying your best. I just want to make sure we can do better. We don't have to struggle like this forever, you know." His mom's eyes welled up with tears. She pulled him into a hug, and Jamal held her tightly. He had always tried to be strong for his family, but today, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. "I'm proud of you, Jamal," she whispered. "You're going to do great things." "I know you will." Jamal pulled back from the hug, feeling a mix of emotions. "We're going to do great things, Mom. We're in this together." Later that evening, after dinner, Jamal sat alone in his room, looking over the bank app again. He had a lot to think about. There were still so many things he didn't know, so many questions about what to do next. But he felt like he had a direction now. He wasn't just working to survive anymore. He was working for something bigger. For his future, for his family, for everything that he knew they deserved. And just as he was about to put his phone down, he saw a new message from Mr. Harris, the bank manager. It was short but important. "Jamal, I've been thinking about our conversation. When you're ready, I'd like to help you set up a plan for your future. You've got potential, and I'd love to see you use it." Jamal smiled to himself. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he felt like he had a chance to take control of it. The next morning, Jamal woke up to a crisp, clear day. The sun filtered through his bedroom window, casting soft beams of light across the room. It was a quiet Saturday, and for the first time in a long while, Jamal didn't feel the usual weight of worry pressing down on him. He had been thinking about what happened at the bank for most of the night, and now as the new day unfolded, he felt different, not just because of the money in his account, but because of the way Mr. Harris had treated him. Jamal had grown up in a world where people didn't always look beyond appearances. His worn shoes, his second-hand clothes, and the tough life his family lived often made him feel invisible. At school, he'd learned to keep his head down, work hard, and ignore the looks or snickers from other kids. But what Mr. Harris had said to him at the bank had stayed with him. It wasn't just about the money. It was about someone seeing him for who he was, not just his shoes or his background. After breakfast, Jamal decided to go back to the bank. He wasn't sure what he was going to say, but he knew there was something important left unsaid. The encounter with Mr. Harris had opened up a new chapter in his life, one where he was beginning to see himself not just as a kid from a rough neighborhood, but as someone with potential, someone who could make a difference. As he walked through the familiar streets toward the bank, Jamal couldn't help but notice how different everything seemed today. The same cracked sidewalks, the same old houses, but to him, it felt like things were shifting. His perspective had changed. For once, he wasn't just surviving. He was planning. He was thinking about the future. When Jamal reached the bank, he paused for a moment before stepping inside. The bright, polished floors greeted him just as they had the day before. He walked to the counter, where Mr. Harris was behind the desk, talking to a customer. Jamal stood quietly, waiting for him to finish. He didn't want to interrupt, but his heart was beating faster now. He didn't know why he was nervous. This wasn't a huge deal, was it? The moment Mr. Harris finished his conversation with the customer, he turned to see Jamal standing there. His face lit up when he saw the young boy again, and for a second, Jamal felt a surge of pride. Mr. Harris had treated him with respect yesterday, but now there was a new understanding between them. It wasn't just about money, it was about recognition. Recognition that Jamal was more than just another face in the crowd. "Good to see you again, Jamal," Mr. Harris said, his voice warm and welcoming. Jamal smiled back, though he was still unsure how to begin. He had come for a reason, but the words didn't quite come as easily as he had hoped. I wanted to thank you," Jamal finally said, his voice steady but full of meaning. "You know, for what you said yesterday. I never thought anyone would look at me like that. Like I could actually do something big with my life." Mr. Harris raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Jamal's words. "You don't have to thank me, Jamal. You earned it. You've done the hard work, and you've shown a lot of discipline. Not many people your age can say that." Jamal paused for a moment, feeling the weight of his words. There was something else he needed to say. It wasn't just gratitude, it was something deeper. Something he had carried with him for a long time. "I know I've always looked different," Jamal began slowly. "I've always been the kid with the old shoes and the hand-me-downs. People see that, and they make judgments. I've been judged by a lot of people, Mr. Harris, for how I look, for where I live, for everything. But you didn't do that. You saw something else in me. And that means more than I can say." The words hung in the air between them, heavier than Jamal had expected. He wasn't used to talking about his feelings, especially not like this. But something about the way Mr. Harris had treated him made Jamal want to open up. For the first time, he wasn't ashamed of his background, he was proud of it. It had made him strong. Mr. Harris looked at him for a moment, his expression thoughtful. There was no mockery in his eyes, no judgment. Just understanding. Then slowly, he spoke. "Jamal, I'm sorry," Mr. Harris said, his voice softer now. "I have to admit something to you. When you first walked into the bank yesterday, I made assumptions. I saw you, and I thought you were just another kid from the neighborhood, someone who wouldn't have much to offer. I was wrong. What you've done, the discipline you've shown, that's something I didn't expect. And I'm sorry for underestimating you." Jamal blinked, surprised by the manager's words. He had never expected an apology, especially not from someone like Mr. Harris. People didn't apologize for things like that. But here was the manager, acknowledging something that Jamal had felt for years, the weight of being judged by the outside world, of being seen as less than because of how he looked or where he came from. "It's okay," Jamal said, the corners of his mouth turning up in a small smile. "I get it. I've been judged by people all my life, but that doesn't stop me from working hard. I know who I am, and I know what I want." Mr. Harris smiled back at him, the same respect in his eyes that Jamal had seen yesterday. "You're right," he said. "And that's why I'm proud of you, Jamal. You've already achieved more than I thought possible. And the best part? You've only just begun." Jamal nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over him. The apology wasn't about the manager being wrong or right. It was about understanding. It was about seeing beyond the surface and recognizing the person within. Mr. Harris's words weren't just an apology. They were an acknowledgement of the journey Jamal had been on, of the struggles he had faced, and of the potential that had always been there, waiting to be recognized. As Jamal turned to leave, he felt lighter than he had in a long time. He hadn't just taken control of his financial future. He had taken control of how he saw himself. For the first time, he wasn't just working to survive. He was working to thrive, and that made all the difference in the world. The days that followed the conversation with Mr. Harris felt different to Jamal. He woke up each morning with a sense of purpose, as if something deep inside him had shifted. His old life, the one filled with doubts and uncertainty, no longer felt like the only path ahead. Now there was a spark, a fire of possibility that he hadn't seen before. Jamal knew that everything could change, and it was up to him to make it happen. School felt different too. As Jamal sat in his classes, listening to his teachers, something inside him clicked. He wasn't just there to get through the day or to make it to the next. He was learning to build something, not just for himself, but for his family. He started paying closer attention in every subject, soaking up knowledge like never before. Math, science, history, they all had a new meaning. Jamal realized that each lesson was a tool, something he could use to make his future brighter. The thought of college, which had seemed so distant before, now felt real. He wasn't just a kid from the neighborhood. He was a student with potential, and that potential was growing. But it wasn't just school that had changed. Jamal's perspective on his work had shifted as well. He continued his odd jobs, mowing lawns, helping neighbors with groceries, and working extra hours at Mr. Patel's store. But now, every dollar he earned felt like a step towards something greater. Each hour of work wasn't just about getting by. It was about building a future. Jamal no longer worried about the small things, like what people thought of his worn shoes or his second-hand clothes. He knew that his hard work was the most valuable thing he had. One evening, after a long day of work, Jamal sat down at his desk with his bank app open in front of him. The numbers on the screen had grown since his last visit to the bank, though it wasn't the amount of money that mattered to him now. It was the possibility that the money represented, the opportunity to change his life, his family's life, and maybe even the lives of others. He wasn't just saving for a rainy day anymore. He was saving for a future he had started to believe in. His phone buzzed as he sat there, and Jamal picked it up to see a message from his mom. "How was work today? I'm so proud of you. You're doing amazing things. Love you, Jamal." Jamal smiled. He could hear his mom's voice in his head as he read the message. She had always worked so hard, and now he was working just as hard, not for just a better life for himself, but for her too. It was for everything they had struggled through together. He hadn't told her everything yet, about the bank manager's suggestion to open a college savings plan or the other opportunities he had learned about, but Jamal knew he would. His mom deserved to know that everything was going to be okay. Later that evening, Jamal sat down with his mom at the kitchen table. They talked about his day, about the work he had been doing, and about the little things, like how Mia had finished her school project and how his mom was managing with all the bills. But Jamal knew there was something bigger he had to bring up, something that would change everything. "Mom, I've been thinking about the future," Jamal said, his voice serious. "I want to go to college. I want to do something that helps people, something that makes a difference. I know it's going to take time, but I've been saving, and I've got a plan." His mom paused, her fork halfway to her mouth, then set it down slowly. She looked at him, a mixture of surprise and pride in her eyes. "You've been saving?" she asked softly. Jamal nodded. "I've been saving from all the work I've been doing. I'm not just saving for shoes or clothes anymore. I'm saving for something bigger. I've been looking into scholarships and college savings plans. I want to make sure we don't struggle like this forever." His mom's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled at him. "Jamal, I'm so proud of you. I've always wanted you to have more, to have a better life. But I never thought you'd be the one to show me how. You're already doing the hardest part, believing in yourself." Jamal felt a lump in his throat, but he didn't say anything. His mom had always been there for him, and now it felt like he was finally doing something for her too. They had both struggled, but now there was hope. As the weeks went by, Jamal stayed focused on his goal. He didn't let distractions pull him away from his dream. He knew there would be bumps along the way, but he had a vision, and he was determined to follow it. Every day, he woke up with the same goal: to work hard, to save, and to keep moving forward. College no longer seemed like a distant dream. It was something he was going to make happen. Jamal continued to work at Mr. Patel's store and help his neighbors. But now he also started volunteering at local community events, helping with food drives and tutoring younger kids who needed help with their studies. He realized that it wasn't just about what he could do for himself. It was about what he could do for others too. He wanted to be someone who could give back, who could inspire others to work hard and believe in themselves, just like he had. One afternoon, Jamal was walking home from work when he ran into Mr. Harris. The bank manager was standing outside a coffee shop, talking with a customer, but when he saw Jamal, he waved him over. They spoke for a few minutes, and Jamal shared some of the progress he had made, the volunteer work, the scholarships he was applying for, the future he was building. "I'm proud of you, Jamal," Mr. Harris said, his tone sincere. "You've taken what you've learned and made it into something real. And that's something most people never get a chance to do," Jamal smiled. "It's because I've got people who believe in me. Like you, like my family, like myself." As Jamal walked home, he felt a new sense of confidence. The road ahead wasn't easy, and there would be challenges. But now, for the first time, he felt ready to face them. His past didn't define him, his choices did. Jamal had come a long way from that first day in the bank, but he knew this was just the beginning. The future was ahead of him, waiting to be built, and he was ready to take it on, step by step, one choice at a time.